Mistress dressed up and asked Billionaire to meet, but the person who showed up was his pregnant wife. The night was supposed to be perfect: an exclusive hotel suite, a dimly lit room, and a mistress dressed to mesmerize. Sophie Delgado planned every detail meticulously. She rehearsed her seductive greetings, carefully choosing the perfume that once made him lose control. But as the elevator doors slid open, Sophie's heart soared and then crashed. It wasn't Jack Harrison, the wealthy real estate mogul who arrived at her beck and call. It was someone else entirely. And in that split second, Sophie realized her precarious plan might cost her everything. What should have been a night of conquest became the start of an unpredictable storm, one where the mistress was not the only player. Sophie Delgado had never envisioned herself as someone's secret. She had grown up believing in true love, the kind of romance described in Jane Austen novels and romantic Hollywood films. Raised by a single mother in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Chicago, Sophie had seen her fair share of hardships. Her mother, Maria Delgado, worked 2 jobs to ensure that Sophie could attend a decent school. By all accounts, they didn't have much, but there was always an abundance of love and moral guidance. Yet life has a strange way of turning dreams upside down. After graduating college, Sophie had her heart set on becoming a successful event planner. She was determined to break away from the financial insecurities of her past and earn enough to support her mother. This ambition steered her into Chicago's upper circles. Eventually, she found herself working for a prestigious event management company, the same one that catered to millionaires, politicians, and celebrities. It was through these exclusive gigs that she met Jack Harrison. Jack was a man who exuded confidence and success from every pore, a real estate mogul with properties scattered across the nation. He was handsome in that classic way, tall, with dark hair that was always neatly styled, and eyes that seemed to read people's intentions in a single glance. At one of the company's holiday parties, Sophie caught his attention. She didn't intend to be noticed. She was simply making sure the flower arrangements were perfect. But Jack was intrigued by her meticulousness, her grace, and the aura of ambition that shimmered around her. He asked a couple of casual questions about her role at the event, listened intently to her answers, and walked away with a charming, lingering smile. From that moment, Sophie's life transformed. Over a series of encounters, Jack pursued her discreetly. He would request her specifically to plan private dinners, corporate gatherings, and even intimate birthday parties he threw for close friends. He seemed to admire her efficiency and creativity, yet, beneath their professional facade, sparks flew and stolen glances became a currency of silent desire. At first, Sophie convinced herself it was harmless. Jack was, after all, a married man. His wife, Elena, was a socialite known for her philanthropic activities. Sophie assumed Jack and Elena were just another wealthy couple, more invested in public image than genuine connection. She knew it was morally grey to harbour any attraction, but Jack's presence overwhelmed her. His unwavering interest, the thoughtful compliments, and his willingness to share bits of his personal life created a labyrinth of confusion that Sophie found enticing. One fateful evening, Sophie stayed late to finalize the details of a charity gala. Jack appeared in the empty ballroom as she was cross-checking the centerpieces. Under the shimmering chandeliers, he confessed he felt drawn to her. He told her that she made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt for years. Sophie, though initially hesitant, found her resolve weakening. In that moment, the vow she made to never be involved with a married man began crumbling like an ancient fortress under siege. Yet their relationship did not turn into a full-blown affair overnight. It started with clandestine dinners disguised as planning sessions in dimly lit corners of exclusive restaurants. Jack would place his hand lightly on hers when the staff left the room. She felt both terrified and exhilarated. Step by step, line by line, they tiptoed further into a moral quagmire until Sophie woke up one day and found herself deeply in love with a man she couldn't have. A swirl of guilt, excitement, and naivete led her to believe that one day Jack might leave his marriage. She thought if she only loved him enough, if she was patient, if she were good enough, he would choose her. The affair went on for months, hidden behind a thick curtain of secrets, discreet text messages, and carefully orchestrated hotel reservations. Sophie rationalized it all. Maybe Elena was cold to him. Maybe they had grown apart. Maybe there was no real marriage there to save, but illusions shatter. Sophie began to see cracks in Jack's stories. He consistently assured her that his marriage was practically over, only continuing for the sake of business partnerships and the public eye. Yet, photos of him and Elena attending lavish functions together, smiling for the cameras, told a different tale. Sophie chalked it up to an act. Jack had to maintain appearances, right? It was after one particularly lonely night, where Sophie wrestled with her conscience until dawn, that she decided she needed a more concrete sign of Jack's commitment. If he really loved her, she reasoned he should be able to meet her on her terms, not just in secret. She planned an encounter so meticulously that it left no room for ambiguity. She would dress up in an exquisite outfit, in a suite at the Street Claire Hotel, the place where they first acknowledged their mutual attraction, and message Jack to meet her. If he came alone, if he showed genuine effort to be there just for her, Sophie believed it would validate everything. But destiny, as it often does, had other plans in store. The Street Claire Hotel was an architectural gem in downtown Chicago, boasting sleek marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a discreet staff trained to cater to the city's elite. Its private suites offered panoramic views of glittering skyscrapers and the calm waters of Lake Michigan. For Sophie, the place held sentimental weight. It was there she first felt the electric spark that Jack ignited in her. On that cold Tuesday evening, the air was crisp, and Sophie arrived nearly an hour early to ensure every detail was perfect. She wore a deep sapphire dress that hugged her figure, accentuating her dark, wavy hair. A soft gold pendant, a present from Jack, adorned her neck. The suite itself had been arranged with thoughtful touches. A bottle of vintage red wine, 2 glasses on the edge of the table, and a single orchid in a slim glass vase, an homage to the first arrangement she had ever designed at one of Jack's events. Her heart pounded with anticipation as she typed a message on her phone. Sophie, 7:02 p.m. I'm at the Street Claire, Suite 704. I'd love for you to join me for an unforgettable night. After a moment of hesitation, she pressed send, ignoring the tremor in her finger. She told herself that if Jack truly cared, he would drop everything and come. This was the test, her ultimatum, although she never explicitly framed it as such. Minutes felt like hours. She paced the room, adjusting her hair in the mirror, studying her reflection. She rehearsed what she would say when Jack arrived. She would ask him to be honest. Did he see a future for them, or was she just a fling? She was determined to stand up for herself. Then, finally, her phone buzzed. Jack, 7:25 p.m. I'm in the middle of something important. I'll be there as soon as I can. Sophie exhaled a sigh of relief, tinged with anxiety. At least he hadn't dismissed her outright. She poured herself a glass of wine, trying to calm her nerves. The minutes ticked by. She scrolled through social media, checking her reflection repeatedly. But as the clock edged closer to 8, worry crept in. She knew Jack was a busy man, but tonight felt critical. When the knock at the door finally came, Sophie's heart nearly leapt out of her chest. She took a breath, reminding herself to appear poised. Opening the door with a practiced smile, she expected to see Jack's face. Instead, she stared into the eyes of Elena Harrison. Time seemed to freeze. Sophie recognized Elena from countless pictures online and from a distance at events. But here, in the intimate corridor of a luxury hotel suite, the elegant socialite appeared in a different light. Her eyes were alight with an unsettling mixture of anger, sorrow, and defiance. She was dressed casually, her coat unbuttoned to reveal a noticeable baby bump. In that second, Sophie was lost in a swirl of emotions. Shock, confusion, guilt, every logical thought in her mind scrambled for coherence. Before she could speak, Elena brushed past her into the suite, letting the door swing shut behind her. The tension in the room skyrocketed as Elena stood near the table, her gaze landing on the wine glasses, the orchid, and the bedroom door ajar in the corner. Sophie's face grew pale, and her breath came in short, sharp bursts. She stumbled over her words, trying to form a coherent question. Why? How? Who told you to come here? Elena turned around, taking in the suite's ambience with a withering stare. Jack got your message, of course, but he's not the one you should be waiting for. I am. Those words echoed in the silent suite. A flush of mortification and dread rolled through Sophie. She hadn't expected a showdown, let alone one that involved a pregnant wife. 1,000 questions clamored in her mind. Had Jack told Elena about them? Did she have them followed? How did she find out? Elena moved closer, each step deliberate, until she was merely a foot away from Sophie. There was a fierce protectiveness about her that Sophie had never seen in all those polished socialite photos. When she spoke, her voice trembled slightly, betraying a swelling storm of emotions. We need to talk, Elena stated, her tone both authoritative and raw, and you need to listen. And in that charged moment, Sophie realized that nothing about this night would go according to her plan. A hush blanketed the suite. The flicker of city lights through the window provided the only gentle glow, illuminating the tense confrontation. Sophie hesitated, unsure of whether to stand or sit, to speak or remain silent. Elena finally settled on one of the plush chairs, carefully arranging her coat around her baby bump. The soft clink of her heels on the marble floor was a stark reminder of how out of place this entire scenario was. I'm sure you have questions, Elena began, her voice steady but laced with an icy edge. But let me start by saying one thing. I'm pregnant with Jack's child. We're expecting our first baby in 4 months. She paused, letting the words set in. Sophie could only nod mutely, her heart throbbing painfully in her chest. Let me also say that I'm fully aware of who you are. I've suspected Jack was seeing someone for a while now, but tonight's invitation he received made it impossible for him to hide it any longer. Sophie's mind spun. So Elena had known, or at least suspected, for months. That meant all of Sophie's rationalizations about how the wife probably doesn't care or the marriage is practically over could be illusions. She felt a heated flush of shame creeping up her face. Nevertheless, she summoned her courage. I never wanted this to happen, Sophie managed, choking back tears. Jack told me your marriage was more of a formality. He made it sound like you two weren't in love anymore. Elena half laughed, a bitter sound that ricocheted through the room. Of course he did. Men like Jack have a way with words. And you believed him because you wanted to. She regarded Sophie more closely, her gaze softening ever so slightly. But don't paint yourself as an innocent bystander. You knew he was married. Sophie swallowed hard. She had no argument for that. She had known, and she had ignored the red flags. She had chosen to keep going because the allure of being loved by a powerful, successful man was intoxicating. The moral lines she once held sacred blurred before her eyes. "Why are you here?" Sophie asked, her voice quivering despite her attempt at composure. Elena inhaled deeply, a hand drifting to her abdomen. "Because I wanted to see the woman who thinks she can replace me. I wanted to understand how far Jack has taken this, and, quite frankly, to let you know the truth about the man you've been risking everything for. A spark of curiosity, twisted with fear, flared within Sophie. What do you mean? The older woman sat back in the chair, crossing her legs. She looked regal, even in her casual coat, as if she were holding court. I mean, Jack's not leaving me. Not now. Not ever, especially with a baby on the way. He loves the idea of excitement, the thrill of the chase, but he always comes back home. Always. Elena's lips curved into a weary, knowing smile. He's done this before, you know. You're not the first mistress he's had. It felt like a punch to Sophie's stomach. The words hammered into her ears. You're not the first. A wave of nausea roiled inside her, the carefully curated illusions of our unique connection unraveling. She flashed back to the nights they spent in hidden restaurants and out-of-town resorts, the tender words Jack had whispered, the promises made in fleeting moments. Had it all been a lie? Or was it a game he played so well that each woman believed she was the only star in his sky? That can't be, Sophie muttered, though doubt had already anchored itself in her mind. He told me. He made me believe. Elena clicked her tongue softly, her voice tinged with a mixture of anger and pity. Jack is a master manipulator. He knows exactly what to say and how to say it. He's built an empire not just on real estate, but on reading people's weaknesses. And when he finds a weakness, he exploits it. In business, in relationships, everywhere. A tear slipped down Sophie's cheek. She thought of all the subtle ways Jack had manipulated her, praising her talent to make her feel special, downplaying his marriage to ease her guilt, showering her with gifts to keep her enthralled. It stung fiercely to think she had been so naive. Elena pressed on, undeterred by Sophie's evident distress. I'm not here to fight over him. To be honest, our marriage is not perfect. But I do know one thing. Jack thrives on illusions. He invests in illusions, sells illusions, and he's made you believe in one too. I've seen him do it to his business partners, to other women, some I found out about, others I suspected. But you reached out in a way that threatened to shatter our precarious balance, inviting him here for what, some romantic rendezvous? Well, here I am, instead. Sophie lowered her eyes, tears cascading freely now. She had never felt so exposed, so foolish. But beneath the guilt and the heartbreak, anger flickered. She was furious at Jack for lying, furious at herself for believing him, and furious at Elena for seeming so calm in this wretched storm. What do you want from me? Sophie whispered, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Elena rose slowly, one hand steadying her belly. She approached Sophie, her tone quiet but unwavering. I want you to understand that whatever future you envisioned with Jack is a mirage. He's not going to walk away from our life. If he told you otherwise, he's lying. Save yourself the heartbreak. And if you have any dignity left, walk away. Those final words resonated like thunder in Sophie's mind. She wanted to retort, to claim that Jack had promised otherwise. But now, in the face of Elena's unwavering composure and the evidence staring her in the face, a baby on the way, Sophie realized that even if Jack did show up after all, what good would that prove? Elena's presence alone felt like an inescapable verdict. The confrontation was not what Sophie had expected. There was no catastrophic yelling match, no dramatic threats. Instead, Elena had delivered her message with a scalpel's precision. It sliced through Sophie's illusions, leaving her raw and broken. With her shoulders squared and her chin high, Elena walked toward the door. She paused momentarily, glancing over her shoulder. Get out of this before it destroys you. I've seen women fall apart for far less. A moment later, she was gone, leaving Sophie alone in the silent suite, the city lights now a harsh glare reflecting off her tears. After Elena's abrupt departure, Sophie felt as though the walls of the luxurious suite were closing in on her. A suffocating sense of betrayal and shame enveloped her. The luscious orchid on the table seemed mocking, the wine she'd poured earlier a bitter reminder of her foolish hopes. She dropped onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands, her mind spiraling. Could it really be true? Did Jack have a string of mistresses, a pattern of seductive conquests? Or was Elena trying to manipulate Sophie just as Jack had? The truth was, Sophie didn't know who to believe anymore. Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of her dazed state. She half expected it to be another message from Jack, but the screen displayed a name that caught her off guard: Rachel Simmons. Rachel was Sophie's closest friend and confidant since college, the one person who always seemed to offer the right words, or at least a comforting presence. Sophie stared at the phone for a few seconds, debating whether to answer. Finally, she accepted the call. "Hello?" Her voice sounded small, unsteady. "Sophie? Hey, I was just thinking about you." "You sound awful. What's going on?" came Rachel's worried voice. The question was so loaded, so raw, that Sophie nearly sobbed into the phone. But she swallowed the lump in her throat and tried to keep her composure. "I'm at the street, Claire, in a suite. Something happened, something I never saw coming." She hesitated to spill her entire secret over the phone, but Rachel coaxed her gently. "Sophie, you can tell me anything. Are you okay?" Sophie took a trembling breath and recounted the past hour, from the moment she invited Jack, to the knock on the door, to the shocking confrontation with Elena. She omitted no detail, her voice teetering with a mixture of guilt, heartbreak, and confusion. When she finished, Rachel was uncharacteristically quiet. After a moment, she said, "Sophie, sweetie, this is exactly what I was afraid of. I never wanted to see you get hurt like this, but I'm here for you. Do you want me to come over?" A wave of gratitude washed through Sophie. "Yes, please. I'm not sure I can even drive right now." Less than 20 minutes later, Rachel arrived. She found Sophie curled on the sofa, eyes puffy from crying. Without a word, Rachel dropped her purse and enfolded Sophie in a warm hug that finally unleashed the torrent of tears. Sophie had been holding back. Once the initial flood of emotions subsided, they sat at the small table, the unopened wine bottle between them. Rachel took in the scene, the half-finished glass, the orchid, the city lights shining through the panoramic window. It all spoke of hopes dashed, illusions shattered. "How did Elena know you were here?" Rachel asked gently, reaching for Sophie's hand. "I have no idea," Sophie admitted, pressing her palm to her temple as if to quell a mounting headache. "She said Jack got my message and told her. Or maybe she checks his phone. She seemed so certain I was the only piece of the puzzle she didn't understand." Rachel's brow furrowed. "Do you think what she said about multiple affairs is true?" Sophie grimaced, recalling the bitterness in Elena's voice, the raw certainty in her eyes. "I don't know, but it would explain how casually he used to talk about his marriage being over. Like he'd done it before." Rachel took a moment to choose her words, her voice gentle but firm. "Sophie, whatever the truth is, I think you can't keep living in this limbo. You deserve more than secret hotel meetings and guilt-ridden nights. Elena told you to walk away, right? Maybe she's doing you a favor." Sophie's gaze dropped to the table. She knew Rachel was right, and yet a small, rebellious part of her still yearned for Jack, yearned for the man who had once made her feel so alive. Was he capable of redemption, or was he truly as manipulative as Elena claimed? As though conjured by her thoughts, Sophie's phone rang again, revealing Jack's name. The sudden jolt of adrenaline made her nearly drop it. Rachel locked eyes with Sophie, silently asking if she wanted to answer. Reluctantly, Sophie tapped the screen. "Sophie," Jack's voice came through, anxious and out of breath. "I just got your message. Listen, I'm sorry for the delay. Something came up at home. Are you still at the street, Claire? I'm on my way. She forced a mirthless laugh. Yes, something sure did come up at home. Elena visited me here instead, Jack. Do you want to tell me what's going on? A stunned pause hung in the air. She was there? Sophie. I can explain. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Jack? Sophie spat, anger replacing her sadness. She's pregnant, for God's sake. She practically told me you always do this, that there have been others. She says you'll never leave her. Is that true? Jack hesitated, the silence deafening. It's complicated, he finally muttered, voice laden with the same excuse Sophie had heard countless times. We have business interests. You have a child on the way, Sophie interrupted, her voice shaking. And apparently a wife who's not as clueless or detached as you claim. I deserve the truth, Jack. Rachel squeezed Sophie's hand in encouragement. On the other end of the line, Jack exhaled loudly. I'm almost there. We should talk in person, not like this. I'll be there in less than 10 minutes. Sophie's heart hammered as she ended the call, uncertain whether she wanted to see him or not. She turned to Rachel, who could read the torment in her eyes. What are you going to do? Rachel asked softly. Sophie wiped her cheeks, taking a deep, shuddering breath. I'll hear him out, but I don't think anything he says will erase the fact that his pregnant wife just confronted me. That changes everything, Rachel nodded. I'm right here for you. You don't have to face him alone. Sophie squeezed her friend's hand, grateful for her unwavering support. But as she braced herself for Jack's arrival, an avalanche of questions plagued her. Was there any chance he could salvage this? Had everything been one twisted lie? Most crucially, why couldn't she just walk away from the man who had led her into this nightmarish corner of heartbreak? And so she waited, her heart in turmoil, preparing for what could only be a brutal reckoning. 10 minutes later, a knock sounded at the suite's door. The small noise reverberated through Sophie's tense body as she exchanged a glance with Rachel. Gathering her courage, Sophie walked toward the door and opened it. There stood Jack Harrison, looking disheveled in a way she'd never seen him. His shirt was half untucked, his hair slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hand through it repeatedly. But what struck Sophie the most was the flicker of desperation in his usually poised eyes. Sophie, can we talk privately? He asked, glancing uncertainly at Rachel. Rachel, sensing the tension, brushed Sophie's arm gently. I can wait in the lounge if you need me. Sophie shook her head. No. Whatever he has to say can be said in front of you. I need someone here who actually cares about me. Jack stiffened, but he entered the suite. He glanced around, noting the untouched wine, the single orchid, the overwhelming tension hanging in the air. He swallowed, then turned to face Sophie. She had no right to come here, he began, his voice quiet. Elena is. She's been trying to provoke a confrontation, to stir up drama. It's not what you think. Sophie laughed bitterly. It's not what I think. She's your wife. She's pregnant. She came here saying you're never leaving her and that I'm not the first mistress you've had. What exactly am I supposed to think, Jack? He opened his mouth, only to close it again when he couldn't find the right words. Finally, he muttered, Elena and I, we do have a complicated marriage. She knew from day one that it was never about love. We married for family business alliances. Her father and my father were old partners, and it just made sense. She's known I wasn't in love with her. But somewhere along the way, she decided to dig in her heels. She wants the marriage to last for the sake of appearances. And now there's a baby. Sophie's eyes widened. Are you telling me she got pregnant without your knowledge or consent? That's not what I'm saying, Jack hurriedly clarified. But it wasn't planned. We'd had an arrangement of sorts. I handle my personal affairs quietly, and she maintains our public image. But the baby changes everything. Rachel, who had remained silent, folded her arms across her chest. changes everything. In what way, Jack? You can't possibly expect Sophie to just wait around until you decide how to handle your arrangement. Jack looked at her, a glimmer of frustration in his eyes. Who are you to speak for Sophie? A friend, Sophie cut in, bristling at his tone. A friend who's not going to let me be manipulated. She took a step closer to Jack, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. How many other women have there been? Elena said. I wasn't the first. Is that true? Jack drew in a sharp breath. It's not as simple as that. I've had a few relationships outside my marriage over the years. Nothing serious. Most women understood the boundaries. But you, he paused, meeting Sophie's gaze. You were different. I never intended to fall for you. Sophie felt a tear slip down her cheek, quickly brushing it away. Do you think that makes this better? You lied to me. You told me your marriage was over, that you were staying with Elena only for business reasons. Meanwhile, she's pregnant. Jack reached out a hand as if to comfort her, but Sophie pulled away. His voice dropped to a near whisper. I never meant for you to get hurt. I do care about you, Sophie. You have to believe that. Sophie let out a hollow laugh. So, what's your plan now? Stay in your marriage and see me on the side? Or is this the moment where you promise to leave Elena for good? Because Elena's made it pretty clear that she doesn't think you're leaving. He swallowed hard, his face a mask of conflict. The baby complicates things. I can't walk out on my child, but I can't lose you either. Can't we just figure something out? A jolt of anger surged through Sophie. Figure something out? Are you hearing yourself? You want me to settle for being your mistress while you parade around at charity galas with your pregnant wife? You think that's an option? She turned her back on him, tears threatening to overflow. The frustration, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it all weighed on her chest, threatening to suffocate her. Rachel placed a reassuring hand on Sophie's shoulder. Jack, do you even understand what you're asking? This is absurd. He raked a hand through his hair, desperation lining his features. I know it sounds terrible, but give me time to sort this out. My lawyers, I can arrange a fair settlement with Elena. She can't force me to stay in a loveless marriage, even with a baby. At those words, Sophie spun around, her eyes blazing. You're talking about your wife, an unborn child, like they're a business transaction. And you're forgetting one key point. Elena wants to hold on to this marriage for her own reasons. She said she's not letting you go. Jack stepped forward, reaching for Sophie's hands, but she yanked them away. She found the strength to stand tall, spurred by a rising tide of self-respect she had overlooked for too long. I loved you, she said, her voice trembling. I believed you when you said you were miserable in your marriage. And maybe you are, but you're also lying to me. You've been lying from the start. He tried to protest, but Sophie shook her head. No more. I'm done with half-truths, with clandestine meetings, with the guilt I feel every night. I'm done. For the first time, Jack seemed truly shaken. His eyes glistened with something akin to regret. Sophie, please, don't end this. I need you. But Sophie felt something shift irrevocably within her. The illusion she clung to had been ripped away. She saw Jack not as the powerful, romantic figure who had swept her off her feet, but as a man who treated relationships like business deals. Maybe part of him did care. But how much was that worth if he continued to lie and manipulate? She turned away from him, her arms wrapped protectively around her torso. Please leave, she whispered, her voice tight with tears. I can't do this anymore. Rachel stepped closer, ready to shield Sophie if necessary. Jack stood rooted to the spot, staring at Sophie with a mixture of heartbreak and shock. Finally, realizing there was nothing more he could say, he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Sophie with an emptiness so profound that it felt as though the suite itself had become a vacuum. Rachel guided Sophie to a chair, gently brushing back her hair. "You did the right thing," she whispered, though Sophie didn't respond. She just stared numbly at the door, her world in tatters. The night had ended not with passion or closure, but with a cruel unveiling of truths: a husband, a pregnant wife, and broken promises scattered in the aftermath. The city lights outside continued to glow, indifferent to the agony unfolding within the suite's walls. In the days following that catastrophic night at the Street Claire Hotel, Sophie moved through life in a fog. She took a leave of absence from work, citing a personal emergency. The events industry, with its unstoppable tide of deadlines and social obligations, was the last thing on her mind. At home, she found solace, or at least silence, within the walls of her cozy studio apartment, which felt woefully small, yet oddly comforting. Word spread quickly among her colleagues that something had happened between her and Jack Harrison. After all, in high society circles, rumors sprout with the speed and resilience of weeds. Sophie's phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from co-workers and acquaintances trying to fish for details. Some out of genuine concern, others purely out of gossip. Sophie ignored them all, except for messages from close friends like Rachel Simmons and Justin Friedman, a colleague she trusted. Elena's confrontation also weighed heavily on Sophie's mind. She replayed the conversation endlessly, remembering the swirl of guilt, heartbreak, and moral reckoning. Part of her wondered if Elena's pregnancy had been a last-ditch effort to keep Jack, but she quickly dismissed the thought as callous speculation. The reality was simpler and crueler. There was a child involved, and that changed the stakes for everyone. Late one evening, she found herself staring at the gold pendant Jack had given her, lying on her bedroom dresser. It felt like a testament to the illusions she'd once believed in. In a moment of clarity, she yanked open a drawer, pulled out every gift Jack had ever given, and stuffed them into a box. Then she hid the box in the back of her closet, unsure whether she should burn the items or toss them in the trash. She simply knew she couldn't look at them anymore without feeling sick. Through it all, Rachel remained a steady presence, dropping by every morning with coffee and reassuring conversation. She helped Sophie keep her mind occupied watching movies, reminiscing about their college days, browsing online for potential new job opportunities in event planning outside the city. Rachel seemed eager to help Sophie distance herself from the environment that tied her to Jack's orbit. One morning, while Rachel was over and preparing breakfast, Sophie finally broke her silence. "I keep wondering if there's a chance I could have prevented all this," she said, picking at a loose thread on the couch cushion. "What if I just refused him from the start?" Rachel set down a spatula on the kitchen counter. "Sophie, you didn't cause this. Jack pursued you. He made you believe things that weren't true. And even if you made a mistake by getting involved, it doesn't make his behavior any less toxic." Sophie nodded, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "But I ignored the obvious signs. I'm not innocent. I can't pretend I didn't know he was married." Rachel came over and perched on the arm of the sofa. "You believed him when he told you their marriage was just a facade, that it was a business arrangement. He exploited your feelings. You know that." Fresh tears trickled down Sophie's cheeks, and Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You need to focus on healing now. There's no undoing what happened, but you can decide what you do from here." That night, Sophie dreamt of Elena's eyes in the hotel room, still filled with that fierce, protective energy. She dreamt of Jack's voice, promising her a future that never existed. She woke in a tangle of sheets, breathless and on the verge of tears, cursing her subconscious for refusing to let her escape the painful memories. The next afternoon, she decided to venture outside for a much-needed walk. She strolled through her neighborhood, absorbing the crisp air, the rustle of leaves, the distant sounds of a bustling city. It was liberating to see everyday life continuing despite her personal turmoil. Couples walking hand in hand, joggers with their earphones plugged in, dog walkers navigating the sidewalks. It reminded her that while her world had imploded, the broader world was indifferent. A small solace, perhaps, that life carried on. When she returned home, she found a small package at her door. She recognized the elegant handwriting on the envelope immediately. Jack's. Her heart lurched in her chest as she picked it up and moved inside. Placing it on her kitchen table, she contemplated ignoring it, but curiosity and a flickering sense of unfinished business compelled her to open it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sophie, I'm so sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I can't let you slip away without trying. Please meet me tomorrow at the greenhouse in Lincoln Park at 2 p.m. I'll explain everything, and if you want me gone after that, I'll respect your decision." Jack, she traced the words with her fingertips, feeling conflicted. She had told him to leave her alone. She'd made it clear she wanted no part of his lies. So why was her heart pounding just reading his request? Why did a small part of her still crave an explanation? Rachel arrived an hour later, and Sophie showed her the note. Her friend's expression morphed from curiosity to concern. "Are you going to meet him?" Sophie sighed, glancing out the window. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting patterns on her floor. "I don't know," she admitted. "A part of me wants to tell him to get lost, but another part of me needs closure." Rachel's gaze softened. "Closure is important, but so is protecting your heart. Don't let him manipulate you again." Sophie nodded, a swirl of conflict tightening her chest. "I know, but I have to face him one last time and say everything that needs to be said. Otherwise, I'll be haunted by the what-ifs." The question now was whether this meeting would truly provide the closure she needed or drag her deeper into an emotional quagmire. Despite her apprehension, Sophie felt a strange calm settle over her. Tomorrow she would confront Jack in the open daylight, not hidden by luxurious hotel rooms or clandestine phone calls. For better or worse, it was time to end this chapter of her life on her own terms. Lincoln Park's greenhouse was a tranquil oasis in the heart of Chicago, a glass-encased world of vibrant blossoms and lush greenery. Sophie arrived at precisely 2 p.m., stepping inside the warm, humid air that contrasted sharply with the crisp autumn chill outside. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, no frills, no attempts to impress. She was here to speak her mind, not to rekindle any illusions. Jack was waiting near a group of exotic orchids, his stance uneasy. When he caught sight of Sophie, he offered a tentative smile. She remained expressionless, closing the gap between them with measured steps. The scent of damp earth filled the air, mingling with the floral aroma, creating a setting that was both peaceful and loaded with tension. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Jack began softly. He looked more put together than he had at the hotel, but there was still a haunted quality to his gaze. "I'm here because I need answers," Sophie replied, her voice clipped. "Then I'm done." Jack nodded, glancing at the potted orchids. "I chose this place because you always loved flowers. You told me once about your dream of opening your own floral design studio." "Don't," Sophie interjected, holding up a hand. "Don't try to romance me. Just tell me the truth." He exhaled a shaky breath. "Okay, I'm sorry. Look, I know you've spoken to Elena. I assume she told you about my past affairs and that I never intended to leave her." Sophie's eyes flashed with residual anger. "She said I wasn't the first. She was right, wasn't she?" Jack lowered his gaze. "Yes. There were a few women before you. I wish I could say otherwise, but you deserve honesty now. I never meant for it to happen this way. Elena and we've had an agreement for years. She turns a blind eye to my indiscretions, as long as I keep them discreet and don't endanger our public image. But with you, it got complicated. I couldn't keep things strictly physical. I fell for you, Sophie. The greenhouse's ventilation system hummed gently, creating a white noise that underscored the tension between them. Sophie's arms were crossed defensively over her chest. "You say you fell for me, but I'm supposed to believe that after you've done this multiple times, you told me your marriage was effectively over. Was that a lie from the start, or did you actually believe it?" He met her gaze earnestly. "Elena and I have never been in love. That much is true. We kept up a facade for business and family reasons. But I lied when I made you believe I'd leave her easily. I underestimated how determined she could be, especially once she got pregnant. She threatened to use every resource at her disposal to ruin me legally, financially, if I walked away." Sophie's stomach churned. "So you used me to escape the misery of your marriage, but you never thought you'd have to choose. Is that it?" Jack closed his eyes momentarily, as though pained by her words. "I never thought I'd fall so hard. And by the time I realized how much I cared for you, I was in too deep." Elena's pregnancy changed the game entirely. "She wants this marriage to continue, and if I try to leave, she'll make sure I lose everything, including custody of my child." A bitter laugh escaped Sophie's lips. "So you want me to pity you? Your wife is pregnant, holding financial ruin over your head, and you're stuck. Meanwhile, I'm left with heartbreak and the shame of being the other woman. Tell me, Jack, what exactly did you expect to happen after I found out?" He took a step closer, and for a moment Sophie considered backing away. But she stood firm, chin raised defiantly. "I don't expect pity," he whispered. "I expect understanding that I made mistakes. I lied to you about the scope of my situation, but my feelings for you are real. If there was any way to be with you without destroying my child's life, I would do it." Sophie's eyes glimmered with tears. "You talk about choices as if you have none. But you had every chance to be honest. You chose the path of secrecy and manipulation. And now you're reaping what you sowed." Jack's face contorted with guilt. "I know, and I don't blame you if you hate me. I just couldn't let you walk away without hearing me out. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. If there's any chance you could forgive me someday, forgiveness?" Sophie echoed, her voice hollow. She stared at a blooming orchid, recalling the single orchid in the street, Claire Sweet. "I don't even know if I can forgive myself, Jack. I knew you were married, and I still got involved. I let myself believe your lies because it felt good to be wanted. But this ends now. I'm done." Jack's expression flickered with panic. "Sophie, wait. We can—" She raised her hand again, stopping him. "No more illusions. You have a child on the way. Your wife clearly isn't going anywhere, and I'm not about to sink into some prolonged affair. I deserve more. I deserve someone who's free to love me openly." Tears welled in her eyes, a mixture of grief and the first glimmer of liberation. She turned and began to walk away. Jack grabbed her wrist gently, forcing her to look back at him one last time. "For what it's worth," he whispered, voice trembling with emotion, "you made me feel alive again." She studied his face, the regret, the longing. For a fleeting instant, she glimpsed the vulnerability beneath his polished exterior, the part of him that had been lost in a loveless marriage. But the damage done was irreparable, and no apology could mend it. "Then cherish that feeling," she said softly, "but don't come looking for me again." With that, she slipped from his grasp and left the greenhouse. The moment she stepped outside, the cool autumn air hit her, bringing with it a sense of release. The ties that bound her to Jack's secrecy, guilt, longing were severed. She felt shaky but resolute, tears stinging her eyes in a surge of complicated emotions. As she made her way through the park, Sophie breathed in deeply, filling her lungs with the crisp scent of falling leaves. It wasn't triumph she felt exactly, but a sense of closure. Yes, her heart still ached, and she knew it would take time to heal. But she had confronted Jack, heard his truths, and asserted her own worth. For the first time in months, Sophie Delgado felt like she could step out of the shadow of Jack Harrison's lies and reclaim her life, no matter how difficult that journey would be. Over the following weeks, Sophie's life began to shift. The city's leaves morphed from shades of golden yellows to fiery reds, mirroring the transformation within her. She cut off all contact with Jack. Any messages he sent went unread. Any calls went unanswered. It was a painful but necessary boundary. Focusing on her own well-being, Sophie returned to her original passion, floral design. Initially, it was a hobby that calmed her, arranging delicate buds, pairing fragrant blossoms, studying color palettes. But the more she worked with flowers, the more she realized she wanted to pursue it professionally. She even toyed with the idea of opening her own boutique someday, something she'd fantasized about for years but never truly pursued. As her leave of absence ended, she tendered her resignation to the event management company that had brought her in contact with Jack. Her boss, Monica Clark, was stunned but ultimately supportive. Monica had sensed a shift in Sophie, noticing her haunted expression and subdued demeanor since the disastrous Street Claire night. Though she suspected personal reasons, she respected Sophie's decision to move on. Sophie redirected her professional energy toward freelancing. She found small gigs assisting local florists and event planners who specialized in floral artistry. Her attention to detail, honed through years of event management, proved invaluable. She worked on weddings, birthday parties, and corporate events, always focusing on the flower arrangements. It was creative, fulfilling work, and it helped her rebuild her confidence, one bloom at a time. Rachel remained an unwavering pillar of support, celebrating each small victory like the time. Sophie successfully designed a luxurious bouquet for a high-end hotel's anniversary celebration. Justin Friedman, her trusted colleague, also connected her with a well-known florist named Vanessa Roberts, who mentored Sophie and taught her about the logistics of running a successful floral business in the city. It was a far cry from the exclusive, high-pressure environment Sophie had grown used to, and it felt refreshingly honest. Yet healing wasn't linear. On some nights, Sophie still dreamt of Jack, recalling moments of tenderness and passion that had once felt so real. She would awake feeling hollow, the pang of sorrow lingering. But in the daylight, she reminded herself that the relationship was built on deception. He belonged to another world, and she was forging her own new path. Elena Harrison remained a looming figure in Sophie's mind. She couldn't stop wondering about the unborn child and the future of that marriage. Sometimes she felt a surge of compassion for Elena, tethered to a man who didn't love her, pregnant with a child that might be the only anchor in a flawed partnership. Other times she felt anger that Elena had confronted her so coldly, as if Sophie alone was responsible. But ultimately, she recognized that the complexities of that union were beyond her control. One crisp morning, while working on an arrangement of white lilies and eucalyptus branches, Sophie received an unexpected text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your new path. I heard you left the company. It's brave. Best of luck." Her heart pounded as she read the short message. She suspected it was from Jack, though no name was attached. The subtlety matched his style. She felt a flicker of warmth at the idea that he respected her choice, but she quickly steeled herself. A polite nod of acknowledgement was all she owed him in her heart. She wrote back a single line, "Thank you, take care." Then she blocked the number. Staring at the phone, she felt the final cord snap. There would be no more illusions, no more half-truths. She was done with that chapter. By the time winter gently crept into the city, Sophie found herself standing on the edge of a new horizon. She was actively researching potential locations for her own floral studio, scribbling ideas in a worn-out notebook. She felt a surge of excitement, an unyielding desire to build something entirely her own, something honest, untainted by betrayal or secrecy. Though scars remained, Sophie felt freer than she had in ages. She had learned a painful lesson about the perils of secrets and the importance of self-worth. It was a lesson etched into her very being now, fueling her determination to seize the life she truly wanted. And so, surrounded by the beauty of fragile petals and the promise of fresh beginnings, Sophie Delgado set forth on a path brimming with possibility. She was no longer a mistress waiting in the shadows. She was the architect of her own destiny, armed with lessons from a heartbreak that could have crushed her had she not found the courage to rise again. Months passed, and the city emerged from winter's hold into the tender buds of spring. In a sunlit loft tucked away in a revitalized neighborhood, Sophie Delgado's dream finally sprouted. She opened Bloom and Haven, a boutique floral studio offering bespoke arrangements and workshops. The walls were lined with rustic shelves, featuring potted succulents, bright Gerbera daisies, and an array of roses. Framed photos of her favorite designs adorned the space, and large windows let in generous sunlight, illuminating the blooms in a natural glow. On the morning of the grand opening, Rachel helped set up final touches, while Justin Friedman dropped by with a celebratory bottle of sparkling juice. Vanessa Roberts, the mentor who'd guided Sophie, beamed with pride. Friends and new clients milled around, admiring the floral displays, filling the room with laughter and chatter. At one point, Sophie noticed a solitary orchid perched near the windowsill, a subtle nod to her past. The single orchid that once symbolized a clandestine affair and illusions of love. She paused, considering whether to move it, to remove any relic of that time. But something in her heart told her to keep it there, not as a haunting reminder, but as a testament to how far she'd come. The orchid was just a flower, beautiful, independent of any painful memory. Now, it could represent resilience and growth. Her mother, Maria Delgado, arrived shortly afterward. With tears in her eyes, Maria enveloped Sophie in a warm embrace, her pride and relief palpable. Though Maria had been unaware of the specifics of Sophie's heartbreak, she had seen her daughter's struggles and sensed the weight on her shoulders. Now, the burdens seemed to have lifted, replaced by a hopeful spark in Sophie's eyes. Throughout the day, customers came and went. Sophie arranged bouquets, recommended plants for home gardens, and listened to stories of weddings, anniversaries, and birthdays. Each blossom became a part of someone's special moment, and Sophie felt privileged to be part of that joy. By late afternoon, she was exhausted but blissfully content. This was the life she had envisioned. There were moments when she thought of Jack Harrison fleetingly, like a faint echo. She imagined him continuing his real estate empire, possibly stuck in a marriage of convenience, preparing to welcome a child into a complicated household. There might be days when he wondered about the path not taken, the mistress he had lost. Sophie didn't dwell on it. She had left that world behind, forging ahead to a future she shaped with her own hands. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across Bloom and Haven, Sophie quietly slipped outside to catch her breath. She leaned against the wall, staring at the sky, painted with streaks of lavender and pink. Rachel approached, smiling. "You did it," her friend said simply. Sophie smiled back, tears threatening to spill. "Yeah, I guess I did." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Rachel spoke again, her voice gentle. "I've never seen you look so peaceful." Sophie inhaled the fragrant air that wafted from her floral shop. "I am. It's weird. I never thought I'd feel this way again after everything that happened. But here I am." Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Here you are, stronger, wiser, and doing exactly what you love." In that moment, Sophie felt a surge of gratitude for the heartbreak that had taught her self-worth, for the friends who had stood by her side, and for the new beginnings that blossomed when she least expected them. The city lights began to twinkle, and she was reminded of that painful night at the Street Claire Hotel, a memory that now felt distant, as if belonging to another lifetime. She whispered a silent farewell to that chapter of her life. Then, with a confident step, she returned inside to greet more customers, leaving the shadows of her past exactly where they belonged behind her, replaced by a future in full bloom. In the heart of every storm lies the chance to grow stronger than before. Sophie's story reminds us that heartbreak can be a powerful catalyst for change, one that challenges us to confront our fears, question our illusions, and ultimately rise from the ashes. Despite the betrayals and painful revelations, she not only survived, but discovered a renewed sense of identity. She moved forward with dignity, found her true passion, and reclaimed her self-worth. If you've been inspired by this tumultuous yet empowering journey, we'd love your support. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel to help more stories like Sophie's bloom in the light of day. By joining our community, you'll be the first to see new videos that remind us all. Resilience is the most beautiful flower that grows after the storm. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.